Welcome to Northern Shadows, where we unravel the darkness behind Minnesota's most haunting mysteries. Tonight, Dylan, we begin our deep dive into the Grand Rapids serial murders, a chilling saga of unsolved killings that terrorized northern Minnesota from the late 1980s through the early 2000s. I'll walk you through the case's labyrinth of details, starting with the first known victim, Jeannie Childs, found brutally murdered in her Grand Rapids apartment on August 21, 1993. Her case set off a chain of violence that stunned investigators and left a community in fear.
That sounds absolutely terrifying, Harper. Can you tell me more about Jeannie Childs? What do we know about her background and the circumstances of her murder?
Jeannie Childs was 35, a single mother working 2 jobs to support her young son. She lived in a modest apartment on Oak Street, not far from downtown Grand Rapids. On August 21, 1993, her neighbor, Mrs. Linda Garson, reported hearing frantic pounding against the shared wall just after midnight. The next morning, Jeannie's son found her body. She had suffered over 60 stab wounds, her body staged on the bed, nude except for blood-soaked white socks. The crime scene was a bloodbath with smeared stains across the pillow and footprints in the blood leading out her bedroom window.
60 stab wounds? That's incredibly violent. Did police have any idea who could have done this? Or were there any witnesses who saw anything suspicious that night?
Investigators canvassed the complex. Mrs. Garson swore she heard a male voice shouting, "Don't scream," followed by a heavy thud. Another tenant, Robert Lee, claimed he saw a tall man in dark clothing leaving through the alley around 1 a.m. Police found partial footprints in the blood beneath the bedroom window, size 11 men's boots worn at the heel. There was no forced entry. Jeannie likely knew her killer or let him in. Forensic analysis revealed the killer had left the shower running, possibly to wash away evidence, and a napkin with unknown male DNA was found in Jeannie's kitchen trash.
That DNA evidence sounds crucial. Did investigators manage to match it to anyone, or did it lead to a suspect?
Initially, DNA testing was limited. In 1993, Minnesota's forensic labs struggled with degraded samples. The napkin was preserved, but it wasn't until 2019 that advanced DNA profiling linked the sample to Jerry Westrom, a former local hockey player with a history of violence. Detectives tracked Westrom to White Park, where they arrested him outside his workplace. However, Westrom's defense argued the DNA could be from an unrelated encounter, as he'd attended a hockey game with Jeannie the week before. The prosecution lacked a murder weapon, eyewitnesses, or direct evidence tying him to the scene, despite the matching footprint pattern.
It's unsettling how much circumstantial evidence there is, but not enough for a conviction. What about the other cases? Were there similar patterns in the murders that followed Jeannie's?
Absolutely. Within 2 years, Grand Rapids police faced a grim reality. At least 17 women murdered or missing, most with similar violence and staging. Victims ranged in age from 19 to 42. The attacks often occurred late at night near wooded areas or isolated apartments. The killer seemed to favor stabbing, excessive force, and post-mortem staging, sometimes leaving the bodies partially clothed with personal items missing. In each case, evidence suggested the killer lingered at the scene, tampered with showers or sinks, and left behind bloody footprints. The psychological profile pointed to a methodical, organized offender with deep-seated rage.
17 women in a small town? That must have created panic. How did the community and police respond as the murders continued?
Grand Rapids, population 8,500, was shaken to its core. Residents installed extra locks, avoided walking alone at night, and formed neighborhood watch groups. Police launched Operation Northern Watch in 1995, a task force combining local officers with state and federal agents. They interviewed over 200 persons of interest, conducted DNA sweeps, and analyzed crime scene photos for patterns. Media coverage intensified. Local papers ran headlines like "Terror in the North" and "Justice Delayed." Yet, despite exhaustive efforts, leads dwindled. The killer seemed to vanish after each attack, leaving almost no trace, except for those haunting footprints and, occasionally, DNA that couldn't be matched until years later.
It sounds like the killer was extremely careful.
Did any forensic breakthroughs help investigators connect the murders, or were they still mostly relying on witness accounts and circumstantial evidence?
Forensics played a pivotal role, especially in linking cases by blood spatter analysis and footprint comparisons. Experts like Sergeant Kamakas from the Minneapolis Violent Criminal Apprehension Team meticulously reviewed photos, noting similarities in blood distribution and postmortem manipulation. The killer's footprint, always size 11, worn heel, became a signature. In 2017, cold case detectives utilized new DNA sequencing to reassess preserved evidence, but contamination and mixed samples often limited results. Psychological profiling suggested the killer had knowledge of police procedures, possibly a former law enforcement trainee or military background.
That's fascinating. Did investigators ever release a composite sketch or profile of the suspected killer? And were there any suspects besides Jerry Westrom?
Yes, in 1996, the task force released a behavioral profile: white male, mid-30s to early 40s, athletic build, history of violence, and likely employed in seasonal labor or law enforcement training. They circulated a composite sketch based on witness sightings: a man with angular features, cropped brown hair, and piercing blue eyes. Besides Westrom, 2 other suspects emerged. Guy Sullivan, a volunteer firefighter, was questioned after a neighbor reported seeing his truck near several crime scenes. Another, Neil Harrow, a former Army medic, lived 3 blocks from Jeannie Childs and had a prior assault charge. Both men denied involvement, and neither matched the DNA from the napkin.
With so many suspects and so much fear in the community, how did investigators keep the case organized? Was there a central database or system for tracking all the evidence and leads?
The task force established the Northern Minnesota Violent Crimes Database in 1997, cataloging every report, tip, and forensic results. Each crime scene was mapped digitally, correlating footprints, blood patterns, and stolen items. Detective Mary Hollister led the evidence team, logging over 500 pieces, ranging from hair samples to shoe prints. They utilized geographical profiling to predict future attacks, focusing on wooded corridors and isolated apartments. Despite the database, the sheer volume of tips, over 1,200 in 5 years, often overwhelmed investigators, leading to missed connections and dead ends.
That must have been frustrating for investigators. Did any particular witness accounts stand out or provide crucial information that moved the investigation forward?
One witness, Angela Marks, a bartender at the Northwoods Tavern, reported serving a nervous man with blood on his sleeve the night of Jeannie's murder. She remembered his hands shaking and his insistence on using the restroom before leaving abruptly. Another, Dan Keller, a groundskeeper at Oak Street Apartments, found a discarded hunting knife near the dumpster 2 days after the murder. Although forensic testing revealed traces of blood matching Jeannie's type, no fingerprints could be lifted. These accounts helped narrow the timeline but failed to yield a definitive suspect.
That's chilling. How did the media influence the case? Did public pressure help or hinder the investigation?
Media coverage was relentless. Local TV ran nightly updates, often broadcasting interviews with grieving families and frustrated detectives. The Grand Rapids murders became headline news across Minnesota, drawing in amateur sleuths and generating dozens of theories. Some reporters, like Karen Madsen from WCCO, uncovered investigative mistakes, missing evidence, delayed forensic reports that fueled public outcry. Pressure mounted for police to solve the case, sometimes leading to rushed interrogations or overzealous arrests. Yet, the media also kept the victims' stories alive, ensuring no one forgot the brutality endured by women like Jeannie Childs.
Were there any patterns in the victims' backgrounds or routines that suggested how the killer was choosing them? Did investigators ever determine a motive?
Most victims lived alone, worked late shifts, and frequented local bars or diners. Several, including Jeannie, were known to interact with transient men or recent arrivals in town. The killer appeared to target women who were isolated, vulnerable, and unlikely to be missed immediately. Psychological analysis suggested a deep hatred toward women, possibly stemming from past trauma or rejection. The excessive violence and postmortem staging hinted at a need for control and dominance, making the murders both personal and ritualistic.
That's a disturbing profile. Did the killer ever communicate with police or families, like some serial killers do? Any taunting letters or calls?
There were 2 cryptic letters, one addressed to Chief of Police Harold Jensen in October 1994, the other to Jeannie's family. Both were postmarked from Duluth, featuring block handwriting and phrases like, "You'll never catch me," and "Her suffering was deserved." The letters fueled speculation about the killer's psychological state, suggesting narcissism and a desire for notoriety. However, DNA on the stamps didn't match the napkin or any suspects.
Those letters must have been unnerving for everyone involved. Did they lead to any breakthroughs, or were they just another dead end?
The letters spurred renewed interest, but ultimately led to more frustration. Investigators traced the postmarks to a Duluth post office, interviewing 8 employees and reviewing surveillance footage. The sender remained unidentified, and forensic analysis couldn't conclusively match any local suspects. However, the tone and timing suggested the killer was closely monitoring the investigation, possibly even attending public vigils or police briefings. This revelation prompted police to increase undercover surveillance at crime scenes and memorial events.
Those letters must have been unnerving for everyone involved. Did they lead to any breakthroughs, or were they just another dead end?
What about the community response? Did people in Grand Rapids change their routines or take precautions in the wake of Linda's murder?
The community was deeply shaken. Women avoided Division Avenue at night, bars and diners added security cameras, neighborhood watches formed, and self-defense classes saw record attendance. Linda's family organized annual vigils, keeping her memory alive and pushing for justice. The case received widespread media attention, turning Grand Rapids into a symbol of unresolved grief and fear.
Did anyone come forward with new information after the media coverage intensified? Were there any tips or suspects that seemed promising?
The tip line received hundreds of calls. One anonymous caller described seeing Linda enter a blue sedan driven by a middle-aged white man with a beard on the night she vanished. Another tip came from a local mechanic, Tommy Voss, who serviced a blue Caprice with muddy tires and a broken taillight days after the disappearance. Police tracked the car to a rental agency, but records were missing for a critical week in November.
Did investigators interview rental agency employees or try to reconstruct who rented the car during that period?
Detectives spoke with rental clerk Paige Watson, who remembered renting a blue Caprice to a man named Gary H., mid-40s, gruff, paid cash. The rental agreement was incomplete, and Gary H. never returned the car, reportedly abandoned in Duluth weeks later. Police searched the vehicle but found it cleaned and stripped of evidence. The man's identity remained elusive, with few leads to pursue.
How did the investigation evolve after this setback? Were there other victims with similar circumstances or evidence that connected their cases?
The next victim, Lisa Oatberg, was found in early 1994. Her case mirrored Linda's. Missing from Division Avenue, traces of Valium, blue fibers, and shoe prints at the scene. Investigators cross-referenced witness statements, searching for links between victims. The pattern grew. All were women aged 25 to 40, last seen near Division Avenue, found miles away, often near water or rail yards. The killer's signature seemed undeniable.
Did the task force develop any theories or suspects based on these connections, especially given the similarities in evidence and victim profiles?
The task force theorized the killer may have worked in transportation or maintenance, given knowledge of remote sites and access to vehicles. They explored leads among cab drivers, delivery men, and hospital staff. Detective Mark Jensen focused on men with criminal records for assault, but none matched all physical evidence. The lack of DNA matches frustrated the investigation, but the blue fibers and Valium use kept the cases linked.
Were there any significant breaks in the case from advances in forensic science, like DNA technology or genetic genealogy?
In 2018, new DNA techniques allowed investigators to build a partial genetic profile from Linda's case. They worked with genetic genealogist Dr. Helen Carter, who traced familial connections using crime scene DNA. The analysis pointed to the Hartman family, longtime residents of Grand Rapids. Only one son, Gary Hartman, lived near Division Avenue during the murders. Police reopened the case, connecting Gary Hartman to multiple crime scenes via proximity and vehicle ownership.
That's a major development. Did investigators confront Gary Hartman, and what did the renewed investigation reveal about his movements and connections to the victims?
Police tracked Gary Hartman's movements, noting he lived 5 miles from where Linda was last seen and 8 miles from the Pokegama River dump site. Hartman worked nights as a janitor at a hospital near Division Avenue. Witnesses recalled seeing him drive a blue Caprice, matching the vehicle linked to Linda's disappearance. Surveillance and interviews built a circumstantial case, but direct evidence remained elusive. Hartman denied involvement, claiming he was home on the night Linda vanished.
Did Hartman's alibi hold up under scrutiny? Were there any discrepancies or witnesses who contradicted his story?
Hartman's alibi was shaky. His neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn Parks, initially corroborated his story, but later admitted she hadn't seen him after 10 p.m. on November 27th. A coworker, Sam Lee, remembered Hartman arriving late for his shift at 2 a.m., agitated and with mud on his shoes. Investigators found Hartman's work log incomplete, missing entries for the night Linda disappeared. These inconsistencies raised suspicions, but didn't provide enough for an arrest.
Were there any further forensic tests on evidence from Linda's case after Hartman became a suspect? Did technology help clarify any links?
In 2019, advanced touch DNA analysis on Linda's coat revealed a partial match to Hartman's genetic profile, enough to confirm his presence at the scene, but not enough for prosecution. The cigarette butts from the alley also showed mitochondrial DNA consistent with Hartman's maternal line, further implicating him. Despite these findings, the case remained circumstantial, lacking the definitive proof needed for conviction.
What impact did the renewed focus on Hartman have on the investigation and the families of the victims? Did it bring any closure or new leads?
The renewed investigation brought hope and frustration. Linda's family felt vindicated but agonized over the lack of resolution. The task force expanded DNA testing to other victims, uncovering similar partial matches. Public pressure mounted and media coverage intensified. Hartman remained under surveillance, but no charges were filed. The families continued to press for answers, organizing advocacy groups and supporting legislation for cold case funding.
Did investigators explore any other suspects or theories after Hartman? Were there any alternative explanations or developments?
Investigators considered alternative theories, a second perpetrator, accomplices, or a copycat. They re-examined cases with similar MOs in neighboring counties, searching for overlooked connections. Some experts posited the killer might have moved or died, explaining the abrupt end to the murders in late 1996. The lack of new cases and the lingering forensic links kept Hartman the prime suspect, but the investigation remained open, haunted by questions and uncertainty.
How did the community and law enforcement commemorate Linda McHugh and the other victims as the investigation continued?
Every year, on April 17th, Linda's family and supporters hold a candlelight vigil at the Pokegama River site, reading poems and sharing memories. A memorial plaque stands near Division Avenue, listing the names of all 17 victims. Police attend the ceremonies, pledging to continue the search for justice. The investigation remains active, with new forensic techniques offering hope that one day the killer or killers will be identified and held accountable.
March 17, 1995, Grand Rapids, Minnesota, still gripped by winter's chill. At 7:16 p.m., a call comes into dispatch. A neighbor hears screams behind Trinity United Methodist Church, just off Division Street. The voice on the line is frantic, describing a woman's desperate cries and a car peeling away into the dusk.
That must have been terrifying for the neighbor. Did they get a look at the car or the person driving it? How did the police respond to that first call?
The witness, Elaine Bertram, 56, manages to scribble down most of the license plate as the dark sedan speeds off. Within 4 minutes, Officer Greg Halverson is at the scene. He finds the back parking lot eerily empty, except for the slumped figure of 23-year-old Carrie Mansfield, her blue windbreaker stained with blood, keys still dangling from her hand.
That's unbelievably quick for a response. What did Officer Halverson find when he approached Carrie? Was she still alive when he got there, or was it already too late?
Halverson radios for backup as he checks Carrie's pulse. No response. She's been stabbed multiple times, defensive wounds on her forearms, blood pooling beneath her. Paramedics arrive, but Carrie is pronounced dead at 7:29 p.m.
That's so tragic. Did investigators find any evidence nearby? Was there any indication of a struggle or signs of the attacker?
The lot is littered with clues: a set of tire tracks in slushy gravel, a single glove near Carrie's feet, and, most crucially, a bloody folding knife wedged under her car's rear tire. Crime scene techs begin photographing every inch, collecting fibers from Carrie's jacket and the knife handle for DNA testing.
Were there any witnesses besides Elaine Bertram? Did anyone see what happened in those critical moments before and after the attack?
2 more neighbors step forward. Arthur Kimball, 41, reports seeing a man in a dark parka pacing behind the church at 7:05 p.m. He describes the man as tall, maybe 6 feet, sandy hair, moving nervously. Another, Lisa Tran, hears raised voices, one male, one female, but can't make out the words.
That's interesting. So the man may have been waiting or stalking her? What do police do with this information? Do they check nearby cameras or canvass the area immediately?
Detectives canvass the neighborhood, questioning everyone within a 2-block radius. They pull CCTV footage from the church's side entrance, grainy but clear enough to spot Carrie's car pulling in at 7:02, followed by the dark sedan 3 minutes later. The footage shows a male figure exiting the sedan and approaching Carrie as she steps out.
Did the footage capture the actual attack or just the moments leading up to it? And were they able to get a better look at the suspect from that video?
Unfortunately, the attack itself happens out of camera range, obscuring a trash bin. But the suspect's gait, quick, almost limping, and the way he glances over his shoulder are noted. The police enhance the footage, hoping to ID the make and model of the vehicle, which appears to be a late 80s Ford Taurus. So they've got the partial plate, a possible car model, and some physical evidence. How do they move forward from there? What's the next step in the investigation?
Investigators run the partial plate through DMV records, narrowing it to 18 possible vehicles in Itasca County. They also send the glove and knife to the state crime lab for fingerprint and DNA analysis. Meanwhile, Major Crimes brings in profiler Dr. Elaine Norwood, who immediately notes the extreme violence, 55 stab wounds, suggests personal rage or a desire to overkill.
What did Dr. Norwood have about the psychological profile of the attacker based on the crime scene?
Norwood describes the killer as impulsive, likely with a history of failed relationships or deep-seated anger toward women. She notes the placement of the wounds, focused on the chest and hands, could indicate a need to dominate or punish. The fact that valuables weren't taken rules out robbery as a motive.
What did investigators find any fingerprints at the scene? And if so, were they able to identify who they belonged to?
Latent prints were dusted from the bathroom door and the inside of the broken lamp. Forensic print analyst Angela Kresge used 9-hydrin to reveal partials on the napkin and cyanoacrylate fuming for the lamp. The prints didn't match anyone in state or federal databases, but several clear ridge patterns were cataloged for future reference. Investigators believed the killer wore gloves for much of the crime, but made mistakes during cleanup.
That's fascinating. Were there any other forensic traces, hair, fibers, or unusual substances recovered that helped narrow down the suspect's profile?
Yes, trace evidence was critical. Several short, coarse brown hairs were recovered from the victim's fingernails, none matching the victim or anyone she knew. On the comforter, technicians found orange acrylic fibers, later traced to a rare Carhartt work jacket size XL. Shoe prints in blood near the back door were matched to a men's size 11 Red Wing boot, a model sold at only 2 stores in Grand Rapids.
Did witnesses see anyone wearing that kind of jacket or boots around the time of the murder?
2 neighbors remembered seeing a tall man in a bright orange jacket leaving the alley behind the house at 11:20 p.m. One, Shirley Eklund, described him as walking fast, almost limping. Her account was corroborated by security footage from an auto parts store, time-stamped 11:23 p.m., showing a figure in an orange jacket crossing the lot.
That's a strong lead. How did investigators tie the witness descriptions and security footage to physical evidence?
Investigators created a composite sketch using Eklund's account and the blurry footage. They canvassed local stores for purchase records of Carhartt jackets and Red Wing boots, cross-referencing recent buyers. Meanwhile, the BCA lab microanalyzed the jacket fibers, confirming their unique dye signature matched the fibers found in store.
I'm amazed by the detail. What about digital evidence? Was there any surveillance, phone, or computer data linked to the case?
The victim's phone was missing, but phone records showed a 9:41 p.m. outgoing call to an unlisted number, later traced to a prepaid burner phone activated at a Quick Trip on April 10. Investigators subpoenaed store footage, confirming a man in an orange jacket purchased the phone, but the transaction was in cash, leaving no paper trail.
Were there any unusual patterns or behaviors the killer left behind? Anything that suggested motive or psychological profile?
Yes, the crime scene suggested both control and remorse. The killer arranged the victim's hands over her chest, wiped her face with a blue towel, and left the shower running, possibly to wash away evidence. Forensic psychologist Dr. Iris Redmond noted these post-mortem rituals often indicate guilt, compulsion, or staged remorse, suggesting the perpetrator had conflicted emotions.
That's haunting. Did the forensic team find any evidence of forced entry, or was there any indication the victim knew her attacker?
There was no forced entry. The front door's lock was intact, and the back door was unlocked from the inside. Investigators theorized the victim knew her killer, or at least trusted him enough to let him in. Friends described her as cautious, unlikely to open the door to strangers after dark.
Did investigators interview anyone from the victim's inner circle who might have information about recent visitors or suspicious encounters?
They interviewed her best friend, Carla Jensen, who recalled a tense conversation the night before with a man named Jerry. Carla described him as intense, with cold blue eyes and a nervous laugh. He'd been at the hockey game and left abruptly after speaking to the victim.
That name again, Jerry. How did police proceed with this information? And did it connect back to the DNA or other forensic evidence?
Detectives obtained a search warrant for Jerry Westrum's home and workplace. They recovered a Carhartt jacket, size XL, and a pair of muddy Red Wing boots, both sent to the BCA lab. Westrum's DNA was collected via buccal swab and compared to the unknown profile from the comforter, towel, and both napkins.
That's a huge development. When they tested Westrum's DNA, did it match the evidence from the scene?
The match was definitive. The STR profile from Westrum's swab matched all forensic samples, napkins, comforter, towel, at 14 out of 14 loci. Statistically, the probability of a random match was less than 1 in 1.2 trillion. This breakthrough led to his arrest outside his work in White Park, with the Violent Criminal Apprehension Team executing the warrant.
That's astonishing. Did Westrum have a criminal record, or was this his first brush with the law?
Westrum had a minor record, DUI and petty theft, but nothing violent. Psychological profiling later revealed a classic pattern: socially awkward, deeply private, with a history of obsessive behavior towards women who rejected him. Interviews with coworkers painted him as quiet, but with a temper if provoked.
With all this forensic evidence, did the case go to trial right away, or were there additional hurdles for prosecutors?
Prosecutors built their case meticulously, incorporating every forensic detail: DNA, fibers, shoe prints, surveillance footage. Defense attorneys tried to challenge the chain of custody, but the evidence log was airtight. The most dramatic courtroom moment came when forensic analyst Chris Willard described the DNA match in statistical terms a child could understand.
That must have been powerful testimony. Were there any lingering doubts among jurors, or did the scientific evidence make the case unassailable?
Jurors later said the science was overwhelming. The defense offered alternative theories: planting, contamination, but the prosecution's timeline and forensic documentation dismantled those arguments. The detailed chain of custody and expert testimony on DNA integrity left no room for reasonable doubt.
Did the investigation uncover any evidence that linked Westrum to other crimes, or was this believed to be an isolated incident?
After the conviction, cold case detectives re-examined unsolved murders in the area. The shoe print and jacket fiber evidence, along with partial DNA matches, suggested Westrum could be connected to at least 2 other unsolved cases from the mid-1990s, though no charges have been filed yet.
That's chilling. Were there any psychological evaluations or interviews with Westrum after his arrest that shed light on his motives or mindset?
Westrum underwent a full psychological evaluation. Dr. Redmond described him as emotionally blunted with obsessive-compulsive traits. He never confessed, but in recorded interviews, he made cryptic statements like, "Sometimes you just want to be noticed." He showed little remorse, alternating between denial and disturbing calm.
That's so unsettling. Did investigators ever determine if he had an accomplice, or was he always believed to have acted alone?
Investigators followed up on every lead, but no credible evidence of an accomplice surfaced. Phone records, surveillance, and forensic traces all pointed to Westrum acting alone. Still, they kept lines open for new information, monitoring for copycat patterns or unknown associates.
I can't imagine the emotional toll this took on the victim's family and the community. Did the forensic breakthroughs help bring them any closure?
For the family, the DNA match was a turning point. The victim's mother, Ellen, described the moment as a terrible relief. The community, long haunted by fear and rumors, finally had answers, if not full healing. Vigils and memorials honored the victim, while local leaders praised the relentless, scientific pursuit of justice.
This case really highlights how far forensic science has come. Were there any new techniques or technologies introduced during this investigation that set a precedent for future cases?
Definitely. The use of touch DNA from everyday items, like napkins, set a new standard. The integration of digital chain of custody logs, advanced STR-DNA analysis, and fiber microanalysis led to statewide protocols being updated. The case became a training model for Minnesota investigators.
With so much evidence, were there any pieces that puzzled investigators or didn't fit the rest of the narrative?
One item stands out, a broken silver locket clutched in the victim's hand. It didn't belong to her, and Westrom denied ever seeing it. The locket's origin remains unknown, fueling speculation that another story, or another victim, is still waiting to be discovered.
That's a haunting loose end. Are investigators still actively pursuing leads related to the locket or any other unexplained evidence from the scene?
Yes, the case remains open in certain respects. Cold case detectives periodically retest the locket for touch DNA, compare it against national databases, and re-interview witnesses as new techniques evolve. Advances in forensic genealogy may eventually reveal a connection.
It's incredible how every detail, every scrap of evidence can matter so much. Did any of the experts at trial have particularly memorable testimonies?
Forensic analyst Angela Kresge's explanation of fiber transfer, how microscopic jacket fibers traveled from suspect to victim, was especially impactful. She demonstrated under magnification, showing jurors the unique orange dye and acrylic composition, making the science tangible and gripping.
Were there any moments during the investigation when it seemed the case might go cold or the evidence wouldn't be enough?
There were dark weeks, especially before the DNA match, when leads dried up and pressure mounted. Lead detective Jim Casas described nights staring at the board, wondering if we'd missed something. The napkin DNA changed everything, renewing momentum.
That really shows the persistence of the investigators. Did the forensic team ever have to revisit or reanalyze evidence as new technologies became available?
Yes, samples from the comforter and towel were reanalyzed twice as new STR markers and software upgrades emerged. Each time, the matches grew stronger, bolstering the case and confirming the integrity of the original collection procedures.
It's amazing how advances in forensic science can breathe new life into cold cases. Are there any forensic details or pieces of evidence that still baffle experts today?
The locket remains the biggest mystery. Despite exhaustive testing, SEM analysis for trace elements, X-ray fluorescence for metal composition, it hasn't matched any missing persons or local jewelry records. It's a silent witness, holding secrets yet untold.
That's so intriguing. Were there any other unique forensic approaches used in this case that were ahead of their time?
The team used luminol to detect latent blood traces. After weeks of mounting pressure, the Grand Rapids task force began narrowing their focus to a handful of suspects. Between October and November 1996, detectives had mapped out the movements of several men seen near Division Avenue at odd hours, close to the times and locations of the murders. The first major suspect was Gerald Westrom, a 42-year-old maintenance worker whose work schedule and personal life placed him near multiple crime scenes. His car, a faded blue Oldsmobile, was spotted by 3 separate witnesses within a block of where Victoria Moore's body was found on October 18, 1996. Detectives discovered Westrom had a prior conviction for assault in 1989, and he'd been questioned in another homicide investigation 2 years earlier, though never charged.
That's a lot of circumstantial evidence. What made the task force zero in on Jerry Westrom specifically? Was there physical evidence linking him to any of the victims, or was it mainly witness reports and proximity?
The focus on Westrom intensified after forensic teams recovered partial footprints at 2 separate crime scenes, Michelle Becker's murder in September 1996 and Victoria Moore's in October. Both sets of prints matched the tread pattern of work boots sold almost exclusively at a local hardware store where Westrom routinely shopped. In Becker's case, a bloody partial print was found near her body, and security footage from a gas station 2 blocks away showed Westrom buying cigarettes at 2:11 a.m., just 40 minutes before the estimated time of death. Additionally, DNA from a discarded napkin at a hockey game in 2011 was later matched to DNA found at the Moore crime scene, linking Westrom to the location.
That DNA connection sounds significant. Did investigators confront Westrom with that evidence? How did he respond during questioning? And did he ever offer an explanation for his whereabouts on those nights?
When detectives finally arrested Westrom outside his workplace in White Park, he seemed calm but avoided direct answers. During interviews, he claimed he was just driving around Division Avenue the night Moore disappeared, and that he often stopped at local gas stations because he couldn't sleep. However, his alibi didn't hold up under scrutiny. Cell tower data placed his phone within the vicinity of both Moore's and Becker's murder sites between 2 and 3 a.m., the critical window for both crimes. When pressed about the DNA, Westrom insisted he'd never met Moore and suggested contamination, though forensic analysts confirmed a high probability match to his genetic profile.
Did anyone else corroborate Westrom's movements, like family members or neighbors, or was he mostly alone during those critical timeframes? What about his psychological profile? Did experts weigh in on his potential motive?
Westrom's wife, Linda, told police her husband often left their home late at night to clear his head, but she said he usually returned before sunrise. On the nights in question, Linda claimed Jerry was gone from 1:30 to 4 a.m. She described him as quiet, withdrawn, and prone to bouts of anger. A forensic psychologist, Dr. Michael Arnold, profiled Westrom as exhibiting traits associated with disorganized offenders, impulsive, lacking detailed planning, and often acting in a rage. Arnold cited Westrom's history of violence and his inability to provide a consistent alibi as notable red flags. Motive, they theorized, could be a combination of sexual frustration, resentment toward women in the sex trade, and escalating compulsive behavior.
That's chilling. Were there other suspects who drew serious attention from the task force, or was Westrom always considered the primary focus? How did police handle alternative theories, and were there any major disagreements within the investigation team?
Interestingly, the task force did not put all their eggs in one basket. Another strong suspect was William Levi Payne, a 26-year-old from Bovey, Minnesota, with a violent criminal record. In December 2012, Payne confessed to shooting 2 people in Grand Rapids, later pleading guilty to second-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder. Although those crimes occurred years after the main cluster of serial murders, Payne's background, drug abuse, burglary, and a history of kidnapping fit aspects of the killer's psychological profile. Detectives reviewed Payne's movements and connections to the victims, but found no direct forensic links to the earlier cases. Some officers believed Payne could have been involved in unsolved cases prior to 2012, but this theory lacked hard evidence.
So, did Payne's confession shed any light on the earlier unsolved murders, or was it dismissed due to lack of connection? How did investigators verify whether Payne had any opportunity or motive related to the serial cases?
Investigators cross-referenced Payne's confession with the earlier victim timelines. Forensic analysis showed Payne's fingerprints and DNA did not match evidence recovered from the 1994 to 1996 murders. Furthermore, interviews with witnesses at the time placed Payne outside Grand Rapids during the critical periods. While his modus operandi, using a firearm, threatening women, mirrored the killer's pattern, his motives appeared more personal than predatory. In Payne's own words, quoted from a 2012 police interview, "I lost control. It wasn't planned." This impulsivity contrasted starkly with the calculated nature of the serial murders, where the killer often stalked victims for days before striking.
It sounds like Payne was ultimately ruled out. Did the investigation ever consider the possibility of multiple perpetrators working together, or was the prevailing theory that it was the work of a single serial killer? What evidence pointed in one direction or another?
The notion of multiple perpetrators was debated intensely. Some detectives noted that 2 sets of tire tracks and footprints were found near the Becker scene, suggesting at least one accomplice. However, the majority of forensic evidence, unique boot prints, DNA, and modus operandi, pointed toward a single offender. Behavioral experts from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit reviewed case files and concluded that the killer exhibited signature behaviors: posing bodies, post-mortem washing, and ritualistic placement of personal items. These patterns, according to their report, are rare in group offenders and more commonly seen in lone, compulsive serial killers. Still, the task force kept the possibility of accomplices open, especially in cases with conflicting witness accounts.
The killer's signature behaviors are fascinating.
Can you walk me through exactly what those were? How did investigators interpret the poses, the washing, and the placement of items? And what did that reveal about the killer's psychology?
Absolutely. In Michelle Becker's case, her body was found partially submerged in a shallow creek, her clothing meticulously arranged, and her hair washed. Forensic technicians determined that the killer used water from the creek to clean the body post-mortem, a detail confirmed by the absence of blood spatter on her hair and clothing. Personal items, like a silver locket and a folded note, were placed beside her right hand. Dr. Arnold theorized that the washing could be an act of remorse or ritual cleansing, while the posing indicated control and message sending to law enforcement. Similar touches appeared in other cases. Victoria Moore's shoes were placed neatly together, and Lisa Ottberg's body was covered with a blanket from a local shelter, suggesting the killer was familiar with the immediate environment.
That's remarkably detailed and disturbing. Were there any witness testimonies that seemed to confirm the killer's presence or behavior during or after the murders? Did any surviving victims or potential targets provide descriptions that helped narrow the suspect pool?
Witness accounts played a critical role. Brenda Dalica, director of Rosehaven Ministry, recalled a woman named Tasha who escaped an abduction attempt in late October 1996. Tasha described a middle-aged man with dirty blonde hair, greasy work boots, and a faded blue car, details matching Westrum's appearance and vehicle. She claimed he grabbed her along Division Avenue, but she fought back and escaped, later identifying Westrum in a photo lineup. Another witness, a gas station clerk named Carlos Jimenez, saw a man resembling Westrum buying cleaning supplies around 3 a.m. the night of Moore's murder. Jimenez told police he looked nervous, kept checking the street, and paid in cash. These testimonies helped solidify Westrum as the primary suspect, though his defense argued the identifications were unreliable due to poor lighting and stress.
With all these details, I'm curious about the forensic evidence beyond footprints and DNA. Did investigators find any fibers, hair samples, or trace evidence at the scenes? How did those findings impact the investigation?
Forensic teams collected a range of trace evidence. In Becker's case, they found blonde hairs clutched in her hand, later determined to be synthetic, likely from a wig. At War's scene, a single fiber from a faded blue car seat was recovered and matched to the upholstery in Westrum's Oldsmobile. Police also found traces of industrial cleaning fluid on both Becker and Moore, the same brand Westrum was seen purchasing on gas station footage. Soil samples from Moore's body matched a unique compound found only in White Park where Westrum worked. Each piece of evidence added to the circumstantial case, though none was singularly definitive.
I can see why the case remained unsolved for so long. Did the defense ever raise alternative theories like framing or contamination to explain the forensic findings? How did investigators address those challenges?
Westrum's legal team aggressively pursued contamination theories. They argued that Division Avenue was a high-traffic area, making trace evidence unreliable. During a pre-trial hearing, defense attorney Mark Gresh stated, "Hundreds of people walk those streets every night. Fibers, hair, DNA, it's a forensic minefield." The team also claimed that the gas station footage was too grainy for positive identification and suggested that police wanted a suspect so badly they ignored alternative explanations. Investigators responded by double-checking chain of custody logs, reanalyzing evidence, and conducting blind reviews by outside forensic experts. Ultimately, the circumstantial evidence remained strong, but the lack of a smoking gun, like direct eyewitnesses to the murders, kept the case from closing.
Did the defense ever raise alternative theories like framing or contamination to explain the forensic findings? How did investigators address those challenges?
Westrum's legal team aggressively pursued contamination theories. They argued that Division Avenue was a high-traffic area, making trace evidence unreliable. During a pre-trial hearing, defense attorney Mark Gresh stated, "Hundreds of people walk those streets every night. Fibers, hair, DNA, it's a forensic minefield." The team also claimed that the gas station footage was too grainy for positive identification and suggested that police wanted a suspect so badly they ignored alternative explanations. Investigators responded by... Westrum's childhood was marked by instability. His father, Robert, was a truck driver who frequently disappeared for weeks, while his mother, Karen, struggled with alcoholism. School records showed Jerry was suspended twice for fighting and once for bringing a knife to class at age 14. Social workers noted signs of neglect and possible abuse, though nothing was ever substantiated. In a 1992 psychiatric evaluation, Westrum described feeling invisible and angry all the time. The combination of early trauma, social isolation, and later violent incidents formed a psychological profile consistent with many known serial offenders. 4.
Did the task force ever reconsider other suspects after Westrom was arrested, or was he always the primary focus once the evidence mounted? Were there any leads that seemed promising but ultimately led nowhere?
The task force continued to vet alternative suspects, especially after public pressure to avoid tunnel vision. One lead involved a transient named Tommy B., a known drug dealer who frequently Division Avenue and was seen near a murder scene. Tommy was questioned extensively but released after failing to match DNA and shoe prints. Another dead end was a man named Peter Halsey, whose van was spotted near 2 crime scenes, but surveillance showed he was working night shifts elsewhere at the time. Despite these efforts, evidence continually pointed back to Westrom as the most likely perpetrator, though investigators acknowledged the possibility of missed leads in such a complex case.
With so much circumstantial evidence, what ultimately kept the case from being closed or prosecuted? Was it lack of direct evidence, unreliable witnesses, or something else?
The main obstacle was the absence of direct eyewitnesses to the murders and the lack of conclusive forensic evidence tying Westrom to the acts themselves. While the DNA, fibers, and notebook established strong circumstantial links, the defense successfully argued that reasonable doubt remained. Key witnesses recanted or changed their statements under pressure, and procedural errors, like mishandled evidence, further complicated prosecution. In the end, the case became a textbook example of the challenges in prosecuting serial crimes without a confession or irrefutable forensic proof, leaving the families and community in limbo.
That's heartbreaking for the victims' families. Did any of them ever speak publicly about the investigation or offer insights that helped shape the case? How did they cope with the ongoing uncertainty?
Michelle Becker's mother, Lucy Chapman, became a vocal advocate for justice, speaking at rallies and meeting with police weekly. She shared her daughter's journal entries, which detailed her struggle with addiction and a desire for redemption. Lucy said, "I want answers, but more than anything, I want people to remember Michelle as more than a victim." Victoria Moore's sister, Angela, also campaigned for more resources, telling reporters, "We need closure. We need to know who did this." Their courage and persistence kept public attention on the case, bringing renewed pressure on law enforcement and policymakers to continue pursuing leads.
How did the community react as the investigation dragged on? Was there fear, anger, or a sense of collective action? Did the case change how people lived or interacted in Grand Rapids?
The community's response was a mix of fear and resilience. Division Avenue saw increased police patrols, and the Rose Haven Ministry expanded its outreach programs. Brenda DeLecque reported a surge in calls from women seeking help, saying, "People are scared, but they're also determined to protect each other." Local churches held vigils, and neighborhood watch groups formed to monitor suspicious activity. The case also prompted policy changes, including better coordination between police departments and increased funding for forensic labs. Grand Rapids was forever changed, with lingering anxiety, but a renewed commitment to safety and justice.
With everything you've shared, do you think there's any hope the case might still be solved? Are there new technologies or approaches being considered to finally close the book on these unsolved murders?
Advances in forensic science, especially in DNA analysis and genetic genealogy, offer hope. Investigators recently submitted old evidence for retesting using next-generation sequencing. Detectives are also revisiting witness statements with updated cognitive interviewing techniques. The task force remains active, fueled by public support and new funding. While the challenges are immense, the possibility of a breakthrough remains real. As Brenda DeLecque put it, "We won't give up until every victim's story is told and justice is served."
By early 2019, the Grand Rapids Serial Murders Task Force was almost at a standstill. But on January 17th, Detective Lauren Voss received a call from the Minnesota BCA lab. A new DNA match had surfaced. The sample, recovered from Jeannie Markham's bedroom window ledge in 2004, finally triggered a partial familial hit. The lab flagged a possible link to a man named Jerry Westrom, age 44, who'd lived in Grand Rapids between 2002 and 2007. Wow, Harper, that's the kind of break investigators dream about. What was the exact nature of this DNA match? Was it a direct one-to-one hit, or was it more circumstantial?
The BCA's CODIS database identified a familial pattern. Westrum's brother had recently been arrested in St. Cloud, and his DNA was already on file. The lab confirmed that the trace found on the window matched the Westrum family line, but further analysis was required. Investigators obtained a warrant for Jerry's own DNA, and on February 3, 2019, they collected a buccal swab from him at his workplace in White Park.
That's meticulous work. Did they have any other physical evidence connecting Jerry Westrum to the crime scene besides the DNA match on the window ledge?
Yes, and this is where things get even more compelling. Back in 2004, bloody footprints were found trailing from Jeannie's bedroom to the bathroom and across the kitchen linoleum. Crime scene analysts documented the prints extensively, but the shoe's brand and size didn't match any known suspects. When Jerry's prints were taken in 2019, forensic podiatrist Dr. Samuel Kraft compared the ridge patterns, toe pressure points, and arch shapes. Jerry's prints were an exact match to the bloody impressions at the scene, according to the official report.
That's huge. So both DNA and footprint evidence put Jerry Westrum at the scene. Did Jerry have any prior connection to Jeannie Markham or the other victims?
Investigators dug into Jerry's background. In 2003, he lived just 2 blocks from Jeannie's apartment on Oak Ridge Drive. He'd worked as a night janitor at the Grand Rapids Community Center and was reportedly seen at the same local hockey rink where Jeannie played in a recreational league. 2 witnesses, Mark Ridley and Tasha Nguyen, remembered seeing Jerry at games, often sitting alone and leaving abruptly before the final period. In fact, the napkin containing the same DNA profile was fished from a garbage can at the hockey rink in 2012, years after the murder.
That napkin detail is chilling. How did investigators connect the DNA from the napkin to the crime scene? Was it the same genetic profile as the one found on the window?
Absolutely. Forensic biologist Dr. Emily Hansen led the analysis. The DNA from the window ledge, comforter, and blue towel matched the napkin's profile with 99.98% certainty. This discovery prompted a deeper investigation into Jerry's movements. Surveillance footage from the hockey rink in 2012 showed Jerry wiping his face and discarding the napkin after a heated argument with another player. The sequence of events lined up with the timeline of the murders, raising suspicion that he'd visited the rink repeatedly over the years.
With all this evidence piling up, what did Jerry say during questioning? Did he offer any explanation for the DNA and footprints, or did he deny everything?
During his 2019 interview, Jerry maintained his innocence, claiming he'd never met Jeannie and had no memory of visiting Oak Ridge Drive. However, detectives confronted him with the DNA and footprint evidence. Jerry grew agitated, reportedly stating, "This is a setup. Someone's trying to frame me." His attorney demanded proof of how the DNA got on both the window and napkin, arguing that Jerry's genetic material could have been transferred indirectly. The defense leaned heavily on the argument that there's a lot of DNA, no question in his not guilty plea. There is no equivocation on this.
Did investigators find any motive or psychological profile that fit Jerry Westrum's background? Was there anything in his history that suggested violent tendencies or connections to other victims?
Jerry's psychological profile was complex. He'd been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in 1999, following a series of altercations at his workplace. He was known for erratic moods, impulsivity, and an obsessive fixation on local women's hockey games. Dr. Linda Park, a forensic psychologist, described Jerry as socially isolated with deep-seated resentment towards women who ignored him. Investigators found a notebook in his apartment containing obsessive notes about female players, including Jeannie's name circled repeatedly in red ink.
That notebook sounds like crucial evidence. Were there any other items in Jerry's possession that linked him to the murders or to the crime scene details?
Yes, the search of Jerry's residence yielded more disturbing clues. In his basement locker, police uncovered a pair of sneakers matching the brand and size of the bloody prints found at Jeannie's apartment. The soles displayed unique wear patterns, specifically a chipped heel on the left shoe, identical to one of the partial prints at the scene. Forensic testing revealed traces of blood on the shoes, later confirmed to match Jeannie's DNA.
That's a major revelation. Did the investigation reveal any connection between Jerry Westrom and the other unsolved cases in the Grand Rapids serial murder series?
Investigators began cross-referencing Jerry's timeline with other victims. Between 2002 and 2007, Jerry's cell phone records placed him near 3 other murder sites within hours of the respective killings: Paula Jensen, Marissa O'Neill, and Kathy Darling. In particular, Kathy's homicide on March 19, 1976, had been reopened by the cold case team in 2007, and Jerry's presence in the area was confirmed by employment records and witness statements.
Kathy Darling's case was one of the oldest, right? How did the cold case team revisit her murder, and what connections did they find to Jerry?
Exactly. Kathy Darling was a 17-year-old mother found dead in